Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. At the onset, I wish to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to talk to all the participants. Today, I'll be talking about Viragals or memorials, which are commonly known as hero stones. And these are one of the most commonly found cultural relics datable to the early medieval and medieval periods in Indian subcontinent, particularly in the south as well as in the western India. My talk will explore into the studies that have been done in the past and what more can be done to bring out the cultural significance of these memorials by examining various facets of the tradition and application of multidisciplinary approaches. Now, to begin with, I just briefly want to uh, state that it is very important to study the memorials for the dead because glorification of death and commemoration of the dead is one such practice that characterizes most cultures. And there is a particular belief that the deceased and his or her deeds needs to be immortalized. But this whole act of commemoration is variously perceived and undertaken, and this variations is primarily because of the socio-cultural norms of society as well as the economic concerns. In that context, a memorial is only one such memorial, one such means of commemoration of the dead. And to define a memorial, you can characterize a memorial as a symbolic representation of the deceased individual, or you may also characterize it as a tangible manifestation of a cultural ethos that glorified a particular mode of death. In the Indian subcontinent, you find plenty of different memorial types which are observed, and these variations are based upon the region in that they are found. So, for instance, in Gujarat, you characterize these hero memorials as palyas. In when you look at southern India, you have examples of Veeragal, which I'll be talking about today. You also have Mastikal, that is Sati memorials, and so forth. And other way of classifying them is looking at the mode of death the memorial commemorates. So in South Indian context, when you look at examples, for instance, you have the first one that is the Veeragal, which is on the extreme. I hope my cursor is also visible. So these memorials commemorate individuals who died in conflict. You have the second one, which is Mastikal, that is characterizes women who achieve the status of Sati. And you have the third variety, which Professor Shetter in his had thoroughly explored, that is looking at the Nishidi memorials, which are nothing but memorials commemorating members of the Jain faith who achieved ritual death through the rites stipulated in the Aradhana text. Now, I'll be dealing in my talk, I'll be speaking only about one of the memorial types because of the time constraints. And these Viragals commemorate heroic death and which were aimed towards protection of the welfare of society through either battle, cattle trade, skirmishes, and certain self-immolatory practices which were followed. And if one looks at these memorial type in South India, you find them in having three horizontal registers. So the lowermost sculptural register has the theme representing the nature or cause of death, or which may also be characterized as a heroic death. The second sculptural register has a depiction of the transitional journey to heaven, where you find the deceased individual seated in a Pushpak Viman carried upwards by the Apsaras, and you also have garland bearers and others who welcome you. The third sculptural register represents the theme of transient rewards in the other world or the heaven, higher worlds. So here you have the hero seated in the presence of a deity, and you have representation of sun and moon, which symbolizes eternity. So because of his heroic death, he's been rewarded of being in the presence of Lord for all eternity. And last, some of them also have a Kirti Mukha, which symbolizes his victory over achieving heavens. So in short, the sculptural registers record these three themes. In a lot of cases, you also find inscriptions which are usually engraved on the blank spaces between the sculptural registers. Now, when one looks at the studies in the past, we understand that these Viragals are, particularly in the state of Karnataka, is one of the most studied of all the cultural relics. But what the earlier studies actually lack is they are very descriptive, and most cases they're carried out in isolation. And if one looks at all the previous publications, you often come across unpublished hero stones in particular villages. That is one of the common theme which you find in most inscriptions. Apart from that, you find that there is an emphasis on reading the epigraphical data alone. So people ignore the other facets that tradition holds, which I'll be exploring, which I'll be presenting in today's talk. You also have a lack of a link between the distribution of these miracles with changing patterns of polity, socio-cultural norms, and as well as the physiography of the region. Now, what about the impact of the intellectual and cultural traditions on the practice? That is also not explored previously, and also a lack of a methodological framework to incorporate multi-dimensional facets of the tradition, which also needs to be looked at. Now, the aspect which I'll be talking about is primarily I'll be focusing upon how application of different methodological approaches will actually help you in better appreciating this particular tradition. Now, in this context, like all archaeological research, you have to choose a study area, and that study area depends upon uh, the context or depends upon the problem of study that you want to explore. Following that, you have to carry out a literature survey as well as a field survey, which is one of the primary requirements of any archaeological studies. Later on, you need to develop systems to classify them according to different types, so it allows your analysis to be easy. You also have to find out means to establish the chronology of these vehicles, because many a cases the chronology is not precisely established. Of course, through the reading of inscriptions, scholars in the past have generally been able to assign them. But what about the other memorials which are not inscribed? That is one of the important aspect which needs to be looked at. So third, sculptural art traditions, which has to be explored, because if you look at the virgals of South India particularly, you find them of a particular form, and this form has not undergone change for over 700 to 800 years. Now, what is the reason why the artists kept portraying the virgals in the same manner? That is one of the things that is going to be looked at. And this needs to be explored through symbology as well as through a textual treatise. Next, ethnographic investigations to understand how the local communities in the present time still hold on to these memorials, as well as looking at how epigraphic studies can also be done, which can contribute more than what has been done in the past. Now, in that context, you need to pick a study area like I've already said. And in our studies, we chose Hassan district in Karnataka as one of the areas through which we can apply this method. And the reason why we chose Hassan district, Karnataka is earlier surveys by Professor Shetter and others have pointed out to be one of the richest memorial virgal yielding localities. Second, it offers a lot of cultural potentials as well, because you have the region being the center for different religious faiths, different political powers, and so forth. But an interesting feature which needs to also be looked at is this particular area or this particular area has three different physiographic zones, and they run nearly parallel to each other. So if you look at the one in pink, you have the plain country, which is identified as a southern Maidan region. You look at the green, which is identified as the southern Malnad. So the southern Malnad is typically the hillland country, thick vegetation. In the past, today, most of it is converted into coffee estate plantations. And what you find in middle is a transitional area between the plain country as well as what you find the hill country. So what is the distribution of different virgals in these three zones is something that needs to be looked at. When you look at the cultural history of the region, identify that there are archaeological remains right from the prehistoric time, going back to the prehistoric times, down to uh, the Vijayanagar Nayaka uh, uh, periods as well. And you find, but irrespective of this rich cultural, this one, the region came into the front fold only during the time of the Western Gangas as well as the Hoysalas, who contributed a lot in this area. And in the sphere of culture, you find, like I said, this region being the hotbed for Jainism. You also have plenty of Kalamukha temples of the Shaiva faith, Sri Vaishnavism of Ramanujacharya, as well as Veerashaivism. So again, this area you find the three different memorial types, but I'll be focusing on Virgal alone. So the first step which needs to be done is developing the chronology of this, the Virgils in any place. Now, the approach that we took was classifying, or rather, we worked on the premise which Professor Shetter had put forth way back in 1982. And ever since, very few studies have adopted similar methodologies in developing the chronological sequence. Now, what Professor Shetter suggested was that the artists there were no separate class of artists who were carving out memorial stones separately, and whatever was done by artists who were working on temple complexes, and perhaps they took up this assignment for certain extra remuneration. And in that context, the artist who had carved these memorial stones, he was trained in the sculptural conventions of that particular time period. And being trained in that conventions, he adopted similar modes to work on. So in that context, we classified them on the basis of the raw material use, because we know that during the Ganga period, the use of granite was very much common, and during the Hoysala, you took up the use of chloritic schist, and again during the Vijayanagar and Nayaka periods, you have the use of granite, which again takes place. So raw material use, and we also took up measuring of these memorials, and we found certain patterns which could be used to classify memorials based on the size as well. Presence of inscriptions in case there are inscriptions, which makes a job very easy in categorizing them, and also sculptural art conventions with regards to how different figures were actually portrayed. On that basis, the 501 Virgals that we were able to document in this region, we were able to classify them into three time periods of the Ganga, Hoysala, and the Vijayanagar periods. We adopted this particular scheme for classifying them because uh, if we there was no other way of doing it, and if you had to give them in terms of absolute dates, then you'll be ignoring a large number of uninscribed hero stones through which you cannot classify. So our efforts were quite successful because using this method, we were able to classify uh, the memorials on this basis. Only 17 could not be classified based on the methods that we used. So, like I suggested, so you have the hero stones belonging to the Ganga period, typical of the sculptural art conventions of that period, given the use of raw material. When it comes to Hoysala, the Veeragals belonging to the Hoysala period, they're quite similar to the sculptural art adorning the temple friezes and so forth. And the Vijayanagar and Nayaka period, they're quite small, and the use of granite is also very common. Now, the next step involved classifying them on the basis of the typology, and the method we followed is classifying the mode of death, which is actually commemorated by the memorial. And in this context, we looked at the inscribed data as well as the sculptural register, which portrayed the theme of death. So, for instance, the inscription records individual killed in battle. The same thing was actually portrayed in the lower register as well. So, using this methods, we were able to identify several types. For instance, battle, killed in skirmish. Skirmish is primarily due to conflicts with over agricultural lands, border disputes, and so forth. Cattle raids. Now, cattle raids is supposed to be quite significant because cattle raid need not have to be looked as an act of thievery, but it was an act of initiating conflict, or it's an act of inviting conflict between within hostile power. So plenty of vehicles commemorating individual died in cattle raid. So you find cattle at the back. an individual who died fighting, defending, protecting the cattle. You also find individuals killed during a hunt. So you find uh, a depiction of usually a large feline. And you also have certain memorials commemorating individuals who died in acts of self-immolation. Now, here, this is a case of the Garuda memorials. Garudas were the royal bodyguards of the Hoysala kings. So you find this particular instance, you find the hero beheading himself, his wife held back by other soldiers, and the other soldiers are actually cheering the act. Similarly, here this is a funeral procession of one of the Hoysala kings, which is recorded in the inscription, and even the sculptural register shows the same thing. So the body is being taken in the procession. So you have one of the parasol representing his higher status. Similarly, you have the crown prince as well. You have a parasol which is there showing his higher status. So musical instruments, a lot of celebration and so forth. And you find the hero or the Garuda chief who is decapitating himself and his wife submitting herself to be decapitated. One of the other ways of identifying a Garuda individual is they usually wear a left anklet on the left leg. So in this, of course, if you zoom in, you are able to see that also being portrayed. Now, these hero stones are not just restricted to human characters. In a few, very few cases, in fact, in my study area, we came across just one. You find hero stones also commemorating dogs who died saving their master during hunts. So the inscription of this particular Veeragal reads as the dog participating in over 70 hunts, and it died protecting its master during one of the when wild boar actually charged at the master, and immediately upon death, even the dog is being granted the status of being able to sit in heaven. Now you have cases, certain miscellaneous varieties also. This is one such interesting one which shows the death of a mahout who died when the elephant goes into must at a much earlier time than what was expected. So dies controlling the elephant when his master was seated on the elephant. So you have the same reference also being provided in the inscribed text. Now, when one looks at all these chronological as well as the typological division, you find that there's a huge increase in not just in the number, but also in the typologies during the Hoysala period. So you have around 180 or something battle, and so above 50 of commemorating skirmishes as well as cattle trade. So death, while during in these instances was considered to be heroic, and they were commemorated through these means. Now, the next task is looking at spatial distribution, trying to understand what is there any link in the distribution of these Veeragals between different physiographic zones, as well as looking at whether polity had a role to play in determining the distribution of these memorials. Now, as of now, there are two predictive models which are popular and very applicable in this region. One again was established by Professor Schechter, who suggested that the nature of polity actually determined the type of Virgal which was distributed around different zones. So here he talks about certain aspects such as soldiers being recruited near the capitals because do not rely on people, the kings did not rely on the mercenaries a lot. So if at all you do come across such memorials, you often come across near the capital cities in the region of erstwhile kingdoms. You would find a lot of Virgals commemorating individuals killed in battle and so forth. Likewise, wherever there is a strong administrative control, you wouldn't find much of cattle raiding stones or people dying out of skirmishes in those areas. Second, prominent this one, which Professor Sontheimer put forth, was the physiography of the region actually determined the type of memorial which is found in different zones. So here he suggests that in those areas which are not conducive for agricultural operations, you would find cattle raiding stones. Those areas which are very good for agricultural operations, you would find a lot of memorials commemorating acts of skirmishes. So to briefly look at it again, I would state that this is a forested hillland country. This is where you find uh, this area is not very fertile, but it's very conducive for excavating tanks and so forth. And the last of this area, which is supposed to be very fertile, but most of the capitals, most of the important towns and all that during in this region fall under this particular zone. Now, when one looks at individuals died during battle, what Professor Shetter had suggested actually is more or less relevant because you find almost all the hero stones commemorating individuals killed in battle in these particular areas. Likewise, when one looks at memorials commemorating individuals in skirmishes, you wouldn't find much in the capital city of Halebid, which you see here, because cattle raid, like I said, is not just act of thievery, it's also to incite combat. But you do find them in smaller or other important towns close by that you have as Belur and you have Arsikere. Maybe this it could be assumed that perhaps the authority or the administration may have not been that strong in these areas, so you could see them in these zones. Skirmishes, again, you do not find them much around the capital areas, but moving towards the smaller zones, you have plenty of them which are coming across. Smaller towns, like I said, Belur also, you do come across them. Now, the other approach that can be looked at is looking at the inscriptions which have been studied in the past. And when you actually look at the inscriptions or the way this Viragal inscriptions are actually looked at, they're not looked at as a major source or anything of that sort, but they're mostly looked at historical anecdotal evidence to corroborate information that you get from other sources, particularly with regards to royal genealogies, fixing the time span for the kings, and so forth. Now, it is also known that it is not necessary that all the Virgals are inscribed. Only over 50% of them are actually inscribed. Now, looking at the body of the text, which you see, is they're all in Kannada language and Canary script. Only the invocatory verse or the Mangala Shloka is in Sanskrit. Now, what needs to be done is not just look at them as anecdotal evidence, but try looking at them in terms of building up what is the character of this Viragal inscriptions. Now, in this context, most inscriptions are actually brief, but when one looks at the full context of these inscriptions, you understand that these are the principal components in case of full inscriptions. So you have a invocatory verse, the Mangala Shloka. You have the political authority of the region, which is highlighted, qualities of the ruling authority, nature, event leading to the death of the hero, genealogy of the hero as well, grant, a date of setting up of the memorials, grants received by the family, process of erection, cautionary note. A cautionary note is usually found in most inscribed records of South India. Usually, the cautionary note in this Virgal inscription is whoever destroys this particular memorial will incur the sin of killing one's parents on the bank of Ganga. Such kind of curses are present. Very few cases you find the composer of the inscription or the sculptor of the record, and then the remuneration which is also made to the deceased. But in case of a brief inscription, what you usually get is a mention of by victory one gets prosperity, even by death the celestial damsels. Body perishes at end moment, why hesitate to die in battle? So this is very significant because the context of a transient reward in heaven is also mentioned again in the inscription. So in most cases, you find a greater emphasis for the deceased hero as well as heroic death. No, I apologize for the data overload, but just to show what a full inscription actually stands like, you have the part which is highlighted in dark blue, which speaks about the invocatory verse, usually dedicated to Lord Shiva, because Shiva is presented in the Linga form here. You find the qualities of the who was the king and the qualities of the king as well, which is highlighted in red. Again, in dark blue, you find mention of the time of death. In brown, you find the event of death, wherein when an army marches into this area, the name of the hero Madigoda actually fights against and attain heaven after killing the enemy. The king actually appreciates his bravery and gives grants to his family. There's a curse as well. Here, in this case, the sin of killing Brahmins and cows at Varanasi is actually put forth. And the process of setting up of a memorial wherein his son sets up the hero stone after performing all the obscure rites, which is spoken about as Paroksha Vinay. Now, when one looks at these inscriptions, you need to understand that these inscriptions are actually a pictorial representation of what is actually shown in the or rather the sculptural art, a pictorial reference of what is shown in the inscriptions as well. So this is one such hero stone which is currently placed in the Archaeological Museum at Halebeed. So it commemorates the death of an individual who was a chief of the camel forces. And when you look at this, here also you find the same thing. The hero is shown seated on the back of a camel. The neck is actually broken. The manner in which he fought, his bravery and all that, and the king appreciating this one. But an interesting this one, which is presented in the last line, which is highlighted in the last line is, thereupon the celestial nymphs brought a Vimana and carried him away to heaven. The same theme is also presented in this, wherein the Apsaras come in Pushpak Viman and actually carry forth the individual. Now, the third aspect which needs to be looked at with regards to this is looking at the sculptural art tradition. Now, the sculptural art tradition, it can be done through the means of through symbological means, as well as through what you call through an examination of a textual treatise. Now, in terms of symbology, I've already highlighted the three themes which are presented, the sun and moon as well, which is actually depicted, and the Kirtimukha. But this is something which is already known and which has been undertaken. But what needs to be done is we need to start examining the sculptural registers using through a textual medium. And what we tried is we started examining these sculptural reliefs through the context of Natya Shastra. And Natya Shastra is one of the oldest, it is rather the oldest pan Indian text on dramaturgy. And we know that Natya Shastra was used as a source for understanding these memorials because we have studies by Professor Nandagopal and also my collaborator Ishwar, who observed the inscriptional records where they showed that many of the sculptors were well versed in Natya Shastra. And through the studies, they observed that many of the artists who carved the temple friezes on the famous temples of Belur and Halebi, they were also well versed in this art. Now, this is the first such study where we have undertaken looking at these memorials, the so-called minor art as they're classified through a sculptural, through a textual medium. And the results that we obtained is quite encouraging, and we were able to show that many of these artists were also well versed and they use this text rather in portraying an idea. So, looking at some of these panels, just a few as an example, what I want to show is in the context of heroic death, which is shown, you find two varieties, that is the combat sequence variety where the hero is shown fighting. You find in the case of this hero stone commemorating individual who dies during cattle raid, the rasa theory suggests that this is an individual is shown in Raudra rasa because you find the Anubhava and Vaibichari Bhava as per the text. you find the complementary states, for instance, restlessness, fury, energy. The same way, even the artist also portrays these kind of figures. Also, with regards to this Anubhava, which are actually actions depicted, you find red eyes, vengeance, fury, which are all referred to in the text. Now, in a few cases, you find the enemy actually shown in this Bhayanaka Rasa, or which is the sentiment of fear. And here you find an individual with folded hands and all that. And the action which is usually associated with panic, hideous noise, and battle, and so forth. And the complementary states is fear of death, restlessness. All these are actually portrayed. So the artists, when they were portraying, when they were depicting these figures, they did not randomly depict figures anyway. They actually followed what was there in the text, and so the reading of this text, reading of the sculptures through the textual medium actually helps in this regard. Now, this is one of my favorite sculptural registers that I always go back to. In this context, you find three particular emotions which are actually spoken about. I already spoke about this being a memorial for the Garuda chief. The left anklet is slightly more visible in this particular image. So an individual, the Garuda chief, is so upset that he couldn't protect his king from old age and sickness. So he beheads himself. So even in this act of beheading, you see that body is very firm and so forth, which is part of the complementary state which should be shown. So here you have the rasa being Veera or hero, which is shown. His wife is actually held back and is taken away by another soldiers. The sentiment here is karuna or sadness, and again you find action and determinants, which is more or less the same thing which is shown, and the onlookers are shown in amazement because you find Adbhuta being the prominent theme, which is actually representing in this manner. So they're actually cheering that act, not stopping him from performing that particular action. You find the second panel, which I spoke about, is the transitional rewards in heaven, where you find the hero being either seated in a Pushpak Viman or carried by Apsaras in this one. These Apsaras are also referred to in the inscriptions as either Nartakis as well as Suranganas. And you find all lot of rejoicement and all that, which is actually shown when these are depicted. So musicians, different musicians, sometimes you even find garland bearers and others. They're not in the images that I've used. And the dominant emotion which is actually presented in this is actually adbhuta, or what do you call amazement. And there is no remorse again, which is shown because the hero has won the right to heaven through his heroic act. And this particular panel, the panel which represents the theme of transitional rewards in heaven, is very significant because you find the link between, or the journey from Ihaloka to Paraloka. So, which is very much dealt with in many of our classical literature. And if you look at even further, all these positions of the head and all that, they're all dealt with in the Natya Shastra. For instance, you find this is Samashira, Dhutashira, all these are actually referred to. Now, the last of these methods which needs to be looked at is looking at these intangible components which are documented through this ethnographic surveys that we carried out. Now, in most archaeological studies, intangible components are rarely incorporated because there is a lot of subjective element which is associated with them. But if you look at this intangible components, you understand that they are actually shared living experiences of the community or the people who reside in close vicinity of these memorials. Now we understand that this is not a living tradition. These memorials, the practice of erecting these virgals no longer exists. But one of the ways of understanding what was its significance to the people in the past is or to gain insights about their significance to the people in the past is carrying out these ethnographic surveys. And our ethnographic surveys, we have been able to identify what you call plenty of oral traditions which are actually associated with them, and also divergent uh, contemporary practices also which we have been able to identify. Now, when you look at this oral traditions, you have local legends, plenty of local legends which are associated with each of these memorials. And to be honest, a thorough discussion about the local legends itself requires another forum, so I'll not be going to details. Just a few examples which I would like to talk about is looking at one such this particular instance which speaks about the death of a Mahur. Now here this particular the legend which is associated is this Mahut was very skilled in his uh, job, and Indra desired that he comes and looks after Airavat. So he has this particular Mahut killed by putting the elephant, bringing the elephant to Mast at at an unexpected time, and he lost his life. And immediately after his death, he goes and starts looking after Airavat. Here also you find an example of an individual who died fighting against a large feline, and so you find him associated as a guardian spirit of the village and so forth. Other aspect which is usually associated with many of these virgals is there is a strong nidhi which is actually associated. There is no direct translation for this word nidhi which is used in Kannada, but it's actually a fear which the local people have and the practice which they tend to follow. Usually, many a times these viragals are usually cemented, and even if they fall, they're not moved from that particular place because there is a fear that if these viragals are moved from those places, there will be famine in the region and there will be practices, like I've already said. Most of these vehicles are in multiple cultural contexts. So you find them usually around the Shiva temple, which is there, but often you find them at the town gate also. This is one such instance where the memorials are lined around the town gate. This is the Nayaka Kamba, which is usually seen in the medieval settlement in the region around the town gate. You also find them at village squares, sometimes worshipped as well in this context. This is one where the locals have erected a temporary shelter as well for them. Tank bunts, they're very common because it is believed that these virgals are guardian spirits and they protect the bunts against bursting. And you also find them as part of museum objects, but only those objects which where there are no intangible components which are actually associated. Many times you find them as associated to be ancestor deities or guardian spirits. And this is one such interesting context because a lot of times in this context, which I want to elaborate, people come and offer the umbilical cord of the newly born calf to the memorials with the belief that this umbilical cord symbolizes life. And if you present it uh, to the guardian spirit, they would protect the cattle and would not affect cattle in the future. Other contexts also you find in some cases you use them as building materials. Somebody has constructed a house using them as raw materials. Museum objects, like I've said, where this is not very strong, they are taken to museums. And also the locals tend to use them for tethering the cattle and so forth. So there is no real significance here which is seen, but they would not
Hello,
want to
Dr.
move.
Vishwa.
Yes.
Time?
Yeah, I'm just finishing in 2 minutes. Okay, this
Okay,
is
okay.
yeah. So this is one such context which is there, and this is another such context wherein people use them to sharpen the axes while going to the fields. So you find all these are axe sharpening marks which are there, but they would not want to violate and move these memorials to any other place. So, in short, what I wanted to suggest is our studies we have documented 501 vehicles, like I've already said. What we understand is there is a great distribution of these vehicles between 10th to 14th century, and they're directly related to the political instability in this region, where which made what you call made people be more aware about the region and so forth. And we also find that this is also reflected in the literary traditions, where there is a shift in the themes which are there in the literature which is produced of this time between 10 to 14th, where the theme shifts from bhakti to virarasa, where the concept of vira dharma, vira swarga and all that are constantly elaborated. Now, when you look at this theme of this memorial, you identify that the sculptural art traditions and the inscription, the theme is very much presented, and the sculptural art traditions are pictorial representation of the theme and content expressed in the inscription. So that is why the use of text and dramaturgy is very much necessary for you to actually appreciate this tradition. Now, but why were all these means actually taken? We believe that this is one of the way of indoctrinating the masses by the elites, wherein accepting death or through particular modes was considered to be heroic in nature. So this is the way, by applying all these means, we actually come forth and identify this particular facet. Now, ethnographic contexts, we find them to be in multiple cultural contexts, but where they are very strictly followed, we identify them to be centers of social gravity, because in case there is any disputes between members belonging to one family or one village, people generally go and settle their disputes in the area where the hero stones are actually buried. So in this way, multiple facets of this tradition are actually looked at. Now, last, just to speak about the future scope, what more can be done? Like I said, previous studies have been useful because we have been able to reconstruct local histories, use them as anecdotal historical evidence for other purpose and so forth. But there is a need to adopt diverse methodological approaches to appreciate the tradition and also situate the tradition in lieu with the cultural as well as the social background and the political background of the region, and the need to start looking at later texts on dramaturgy. We looked at only Natya Shastra, but then looking at later texts, we'll be able to appreciate and understand this much better. Thank you for your patient listening, and I'll be happy to take any questions.